This is the third part of the tutorial on action scripting. You can check out the previous ones at my YouTube channel, which is ShortComp, or you can go to the specific ones, Flash Programming Arrows Part 1 and 2. The website will be up on the screen. Now, what we're going to do now is change the code on the button so that the arrow will move to the position of the knight when you click on the button. So first of all, the arrow will move up to wherever the knight is, and then it'll fly over and hopefully hit the target depending on where you have positioned the knight. So we need to put that on the button. So I go to Actions and I make sure I go down and select where my script is, and I need to, first of all, at the moment I'm just going to and playing frame 2, but I want to actually change the position of the arrow first. So first of all, I need to get the position of the knight and apply that to the position of the arrow. Now, because I'm organized, I've actually prepared a little bit of script earlier. So I'm just going to copy that and then I'm going to explain what it does. So I'll paste it in here. So the first thing it does is it creates a variable called ypos, which is y position. Then it uses the getProperty function, which is in Flash, and it's getting the property of the knight. We'll just double check to make sure that we have selected, well, we haven't called that knight, we've called that Stephen. So we need to go back and change that. So we need to call this one here Stephen. And it's getting, so this is telling it to get a property from Stephen, and this is telling it what property to get, which is the Y position of Stephen. So it's getting the property of Stephen, and it's getting the Y position, and it's making that whole thing, which in this case will be a particular number, it's creating a variable and storing that number in it. Then what it's doing is setting a property. So again, this is using a function that Flash has provided, and it's getting the arrow, which we haven't called arrow, we've called shot. So we're going to change that to shot. And we're setting the Y position of shot to be equal to whatever we've stored up in this variable. So we're taking this variable here and applying it to the shot Y position. And then we're going to the shot and playing number 2. So let's try that. So you'll notice that it moved up to the Y position. Notice that the Y position is considered the top left-hand corner of the knight, and playing that. Now say for example that we move our knight over here and up a fair amount and play. You'll notice that it moves the arrow to here. That's because we've only set the Y position of the arrow and not the X position. So what do we need to do that? We go back to our script here and we copy the things that we use to change the Y position, and I'm going to actually add just some descriptions. So this is get Y position of Stephen, and this one is apply that Y position to arrow, just so that later on when I go back I can understand it. So I've pasted this here and I'm going to change the variable name to X position, and I'm going to change the X, so we're getting the X value of Stephen rather than the Y value, and we need to change the X's here also. So we're setting the property of the arrow, which is called shot. We're taking the X position of that arrow and storing it in the value X position, which we're then setting here of the arrow. So if we play this again, it goes to there. So no matter where, if I move my knight over to here and play it, the arrow will actually move over there also. So the next part is to actually make sure that when the arrow hits the target that it does a particular thing. In this case, we're actually going to put a script on either the arrow or the target. I'm going to make it on the arrow because it makes it a little bit easier if we have multiple targets to know that it's just on the arrow. So I'm going to go to Actions here And I'm going to get a script that I have prepared earlier and copy that across. Now, what this does is onClip event is an event, and enter frame means that every frame that occurs in your animation, it will continue to do whatever the script is between these two brackets here. So between that bracket and that bracket. So at the moment, this if statement here, which is a selection, is still outside of the bracket. So I'm going to move that into that. So it's going to occur when on every frame, every time a frame in your animation loads. So what I've got is an if statement here. If this, which is referring to whatever the script is on. So in this case, you'll notice that current selection here says arrow to shot. So this means that if shot, and we're going to hit test, which is a function that is defined in Flash, and we're going to test whether this has hit square one. Now notice I've put underscore root. Now I need to change this from square one to whatever the instance name is of the target, and I can't remember that, so I'm going to go back and check. It's called white target, and because I'm lazy, I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go back to arrow and paste this in place of square one. That's really important because, again, the case is very sensitive here, so we've got to make sure that all of the cases are right. Now let's just check our script. So if this dot hit test, so if this hits the white target, then we're going to do it whatever is between these two brackets. So in here, I'm just going to add a comment and if, and this one here is end on clip event, so that I can keep track of my brackets, because that's a hard thing to do. So at the moment, this isn't actually doing anything aside from testing if it's hit, because it doesn't actually do anything here. So here we're going to trace hit, close bracket, and a semicolon. So let's see if it works. Okay, it doesn't do anything because it doesn't actually intersect, so we've got to make sure that on our test it will actually intersect. So remember before, we've got our knight moving to the position of the arrow, so we better put the knight in a position where the arrow will actually go up here, and then make sure that it will intersect with the arrow. So let's just make sure. Okay, it should just, but let's just make sure by moving the knight over a little bit more. So our arrow would go up to here, and then if we double click on the arrow and make sure that it goes through. Okay, let's just fiddle around with this a bit until we make sure that it absolutely will. Down a bit. And let's cheat and move the target across. So now, and up. Yay, okay, so we'll go through our target there so we can test that it actually works. So let's test it. We'll press it, and you've got a hit statement there. So that's declaring the hit there, that it's actually happened. Test it again, and it will go through again.